What's up, Run It Once? Welcome back to my second video, Values and Long-Term Vision. Pretty much whenever I start a coaching process with a new client, I realize that they have never really thought about what their values are. And I think that's really unfortunate because values, in my opinion, are by far the best source of motivation. You've probably went through this process more than once of using an external source as your motivation, an external reward. For example, when you do a prop bet or a grinding challenge with a fellow poker player, or if you reward yourself with something materialistic after you've grinded a certain amount of hands or after you've won a certain amount of money. And this can work in the short run. And if you're able to really enjoy that reward and not just sprint on to the next goal right away, this can be fine, but it usually doesn't give you a long-lasting sense of satisfaction. Usually you're happy about this reward for a short amount of time, and then it's on to the next goal. I think values give you a much deeper sense of satisfaction and a much more sustainable source of motivation. It might not feel as spectacular as a really big reward, like, I don't know, buying an expensive car or whatever, but it's more sustainable and gives you a deeper sense of satisfaction. So values basically tell you to do something just because it feels right, just because it's valuable, just because you think it's the right thing to do. And your long-term vision is the picture that comes to mind, like a really vivid emotional picture that comes to life when you think about what will my life be like if I stay aligned with my values, if again and again I act in alignment with my values. So what will I feel like waking up in the morning? What kind of people am I surrounded with? Who will be my friends? Who will be my partner? What does my daily schedule look like? With which feeling will I go to bed at the end of the day? And I'll get into a little more detail in a moment. I usually am not a big fan of motivational quotes, but this one I find to be very, very true. And that is, there's only one form of success: being able to live life your own way. I 100% agree with that. But the question is, of course, what does it mean to live life your own way? And we'll also talk about how can poker help you living your life your own way or prevent you from doing that. Of course, first of all, you gotta know your values to answer that question. And then maybe two quick examples about poker. If one of your values is supporting your friends and your family, and you make money in poker, of course, it's a great tool to live aligned with your values. If, on the other hand, two of your values are honesty and fairness, and you're sitting in a life game with somebody who has an obvious gambling problem or is super drunk and is losing much more than he can afford, then, of course, poker can get into conflict with your values. So let's try to answer this question. What does living your life your own way mean? As I just said, it means knowing your values. But even more importantly, and even more, and that is also more difficult, it means making small and big decisions based upon your values. You can make pretty much any important decision, whether it's a small or big one, based upon your values, or if you are not able to use your values as the decision maker, based upon somebody else's opinion, based upon the circumstances, or based upon your current thoughts and emotions. Again, a poker-related example. When you are running poorly and you're really frustrated, you're getting angry or you're getting very bored because you're card dead all the time, then you can either let the tilt or the boredom make your decision and maybe play more hands than you should, or you can take that step back, breathe for a second and ask yourself, what do my values or my long-term goals tell me in this situation? Then the answer is maybe I want to be disciplined. I want to be professional. I want to make correct decisions, even in difficult circumstances. So if those are your values and you let them make the decisions, you will probably continue to play well, continue to play disciplined. But of course, it can be like these super tiny everyday decisions, or it can be the big life decisions as well. Like, what kind of job do you choose? Where do you live? Who will be your partner? Who will be your friends? What kind of path do you go in life? And in the beginning, of course, this can be difficult because if you've never practiced this, you have to remind yourself, you have to put in a lot of energy. And sometimes your bad habits, your emotions, your thoughts, or the opinion of other people will take over. This is definitely going to happen. But as you practice this more and more, at some point it becomes almost automatic. I can tell you this from my own experience. I use this one question a lot, that is, what brings me closer to my value? Very simple, basic question. And I use this really in like the tiniest everyday decisions. And I don't have to consciously think about it anymore. This question just automatically pops up. And it will be the same for you with some practice. Of course, in the beginning, it takes some practice, but at some point, this will just be an automatic decision-making process for you. And then, of course, living your life your own way also means overcoming and dealing with the inevitable adversity that comes with making value-based decisions. Because many of them, not all of them, but many of them will be very difficult and come with immediate negative consequences. Some of them will be super pleasant. Let's say your value is relaxation and being a calm and composed person. And if you then decide to spend a week on the beach, that of course is pleasant immediately. But there will be many, many value-based decisions that can be quite unpleasant, especially in the short run. Again, the example of honesty. If you tell somebody that they said something stupid, that you really disagree with something, or that you're really angry with them. Of course, this can be very unpleasant in the short run, but will lead to better long-term results. So very often the case with value-based decisions is that they are unpleasant in the short run, but give you better results in the long run. Just like in poker, is very similar that way. And so it also means valuing the long-term success more than the short-term pleasure. And if you do these things again and again, so if you find out what your values are and you act based upon them again and again through experience, your vision of your life, this long-term vision that I just talked about, will become more detailed. You will realize which values are the most important ones, which help you make the best decisions. And therefore this picture of your life becomes more vivid, becomes more detailed, more emotional, and therefore, of course, also more motivating. Because you realize the positive effects that your values have on your decision. And to explain in a little more detail what values even are, I want to make the important distinction between action goals and values. Action goals are the ones that you can check off a to-do list. You write something down, you do it, you can check it off the list. And values are only a direction you move into. That's why often the synonym of a compass or a lighthouse is being used. So being honest, for example, is a value. And of course, you're never finished with being honest. Regardless of how many times you've been honest or you've been dishonest, you can always again and again ask yourself, what do I have to do in this situation to be an honest person, to move into that direction of honesty? And of course, there's action goals that belong to values. An action goal that belongs to the value of honesty would be to tell something your honest opinion, to address an important topic, to address a conflict. And then you can check that off the list, and you've done something that brought you closer or moved you into that direction of being honest. But of course, you will never achieve that magical end goal where you can say, all right, I'm an honest person forever right now. And if you think of life as a voyage through the sea, you can always use your values as an orientation, or you can let the circumstances dictate your behavior. Again, the poker-related example, you can either let the anger and the frustration, so the bad weather, so to speak, dictate your behavior, and you can be really frustrated and only think about how poorly you're running, how unfair the world is, how unfair poker is, or you can remind yourself of that direction you want to move into. I want to be a disciplined, a professional poker player who keeps his focus even in difficult situations. And then, despite the difficult circumstances, you keep on moving into the right direction. Another example, if one of your values is health, of course, there will be many, many situations where you feel lazy, where you don't feel like preparing a meal or going to the gym. But you can remind yourself of your value, of that direction, and tell yourself, even though I'm feeling lazy right now, even though I'm really craving some crappy fast food, I'm going to make the right decision and move into the direction of that value. Values are not society's morals or virtues. Values are completely freely chosen by you. And that's really, really important to remember, also for the exercise we will do in a minute. Of course, in theory, you could choose dishonesty as your values. It wouldn't be in alignment with what society would like you to choose. But if you choose dishonesty as your value, then that's your value. So be aware that your values are only chosen by you. And since it sometimes, of course, can be quite difficult to make that distinction, is this actually my value, or do I only pretend it's my value because other people would like me to behave that way? Ask yourself, if nobody was watching you, if nobody ever knew that you do a certain thing, would you still do it? Would you go to the gym? Would you eat healthy if nobody ever knew that you do it? And if the answer is yes, then you can be sure that living healthy is your own value. Your values are consequences of a set of behavior. So you are an honest person because you speak the truth regularly. And this behavior is within your control. And that's incredibly important to know, because we as humans, we like our self-efficacy. That is the feeling of being in control of our own life, or being able to influence our life or our outcomes through time and energy that we expend. Because if all the time and energy that you expend is worth nothing and nothing changes for the better, then of course that would be incredibly frustrating. And that is, for example, the case if you constantly ruminate about how unfair life is, how the circumstances are not in your favor. If you think about how unfair variance in poker is, that is wasting time and energy, and that really harms your self-efficacy. It will make you feel helpless, like the world is against you and you cannot do anything about it. But if, on the other hand, you focus on your behavior and what is in your control and what you can do to stay aligned with your values, for example, continuing to make good decisions even when you're running poorly, that, of course, is very good for your self-efficacy. You will regain that sense of control and realize some things are absolutely not within my control, but my value-aligned behavior, that is within my control and will lead to good results in the long run. And when you value something, when you value a behavior, the behavior itself becomes a reinforcer. So if you speak the truth repeatedly, and then you can call yourself an honest person, you're proud of that, you feel good about it, that of course will make it more likely that you speak the truth in the future. And you don't do that to get some reward because people will like you more if you speak the truth, or you get more money or whatever if you speak the truth. You will simply do it because you think being an honest person is the right thing to do. Now let's quickly look at the relationship between your vision and your values and short-term goals. Not only in poker, but pretty much in any profession, people tend to be massively over-focused on short-term goals, especially success-related short-term goals. That is for two reasons. For one, we've all been taught to do so. In school, it's all about grades. It's all about passing exams, and in university, of course. And it's not about whether you will be a happy and productive person in 20 years, and whether you live a healthy and fulfilled lifestyle. So that's the one reason. And the other one is, of course, short-term results, short-term goals are much more easy to grasp. If you want to make a lot of money, you work a lot. If you want to make money quickly, you grind a lot. And that is, of course, much more easy to grasp than the long-term results of grinding a lot on your health or on your social life. So this is a very common thing that pretty much everyone has in some form, where you tell yourself, well, I can take care of this later. Right now I have to make money. Right now I have to put in all the energy, all my time into this area of success. And therefore people neglect all the other important areas of life. So you tell yourself, yeah, I can take care of this later. I will take care of my health later. I will take care of my relationships later. I will do my other hobbies later. And to a certain degree, I think it's fine and normal to focus a little bit more on one area of life. But usually people do this very excessively, and they only focus on success and nothing else and completely neglect these areas. And this can become very, very unhealthy, especially if you keep doing this for a long time, because if it becomes a habit, it becomes incredibly difficult to change. If you've been over focusing on success for, let's say, 10, 20 years, creating this balance again, which you've been telling yourself you will do later, becomes incredibly difficult. It's not just a decision that you make. All right now I'm going to start taking care of my health. It's a habit that you've been untraining for a long period of time. And so it becomes very, very difficult to change that the longer you focus only on one area. And therefore, I think it's much better to first think about this long-term vision. What do you want your life to be like? What kind of person do you want to be like? And then set your short-term goals based upon this long-term vision. I think that's a much healthier approach. And don't get me wrong, short-term goals are incredibly important. They give you a step-by-step process. They give you the exact steps that you can take, and they make it much more likely that you actually do things instead of procrastinating. But I think your visions and your values are much more important and come first. And that's why I do this topic first, and talk about short-term goals in the next video. And to get this thing started, to help you find your values, I'm going to give you an exercise where you ask yourself, what are my values in the 4 big areas of life? And I'll show you these 4 areas in a second. But first, I want to give you these questions that you can use to find your values. The first one is the famous why. Why do you play poker? Is it only because you want to make money, or is there a bigger reason behind making money? As I mentioned earlier, supporting your family, or living a life of freedom, being your own boss, having no one tell you what to do. Those are all great values that give you a good why to play poker. Another great why could simply be because you enjoy playing poker. So regardless of the results, you enjoy thinking about poker, you enjoy playing poker, you enjoy talking about poker. That, of course, is a great why to have for being a poker professional. You can also ask yourself, what kind of person or role model do I want to be? If you had children, or if you have children, what kind of role model would you like to be for them? Or you can use a more drastic question. If you were dead and it was your funeral and your friends were supposed to talk about you, what would they say? What kind of person were you? What kind of values did you stand up for? What did you do despite difficult circumstances? What was so important to you that you were willing to invest a lot of time and energy into it? That leads me to the next question. You can ask yourself, what is so incredibly important to me that I'm willing to face all the adversity, all the inevitable stress and negative consequences that come with it, because I think it's so important, that I'm willing to face all that, and I wouldn't be able to live without doing it. And the 4 big areas that you can use as a rough orientation. Of course, many values play a role in all these areas or in multiple of these areas. But the 4 big areas of life you can use in order to find your values are, for one, of course, relationships, friendships, and family. What kind of person, how do you want to behave with your close ones, with your relatives, your friends, and your partner? Then, of course, there's professional success and career. What kind of person do you want to be? What values do you want to design your career based upon? Then there's, of course, physical and psychological health. And lastly, this is the most open area and pretty much contains everything else. Personal growth, passions, hobbies, spirituality. And of course, I'm going to give you some examples to make it a little bit easier for you. But since I talked about earlier how important it is that you really use your values and only your values. Look at the examples so you understand the exercise perfectly, but please don't just copy them. They all make sense on paper. They all sound kind of nice, and I think society would like you to have all of these values, but that's not the important part. The important part is that you 100% agree with this value, that you can say, this is definitely my own value. So if you only find like 2 or 3 or 4 for every category of life. That's totally fine. This is a work in progress. This is never finished. Of course, certain values will stay very stable throughout your life. Some values you have right now and you will keep them for the rest of your life. But some values will change depending on the phase of your life. For example, if you're 18 and you've just finished school, there will definitely be other values most important to you than for somebody who's 30 and who has just gotten his first child, or somebody who's 70 and who just lost a good friend. So depending on your age and your situation in life, different values will have different importance. And also, of course, through practice and through real life feedback, you will realize that certain values are more important than others. And this is what the second exercise will be about. But for now, take at least 15 minutes, because it usually, if you do this for the first time, it requires some deep thinking, and you might hit a brick wall at some point. Maybe you write down 5 or 10 values and then you can't think of any others. Keep pushing, keep digging a little deeper and try to find more of them. And then, of course, you can repeat this exercise. Right now, you will not be able to think of all the values that you have. If you do the exercise again tomorrow, you will think of a few more that are important to you, but that you weren't able to think of right away. So yeah, really take your time, write down your values. And if you want, of course, you can share them with me. You can write me a message if you did this exercise, and tell me if you've had some epiphany, some aha moment where you realize, okay, this one value is really, really important to me. And either you've been able to live aligned with it pretty well so far, or you realize, and of course, this can be quite painful, sometimes you realize there is this really important value or several really important values, and you've been neglecting them for a long time. So this exercise can actually be quite painful, but of course, that also means that it's really, really valuable, because it tells you what you can work on in the future, what you can improve in the future. And after you've done this, the question, of course, is how do I use them? How do I benefit from knowing my values? And that is by asking yourself the right questions in the important moments when there's a decision to make, when there's a difficult situation to face. You can, for example, ask yourself, why do I really do this? Do you play poker because you enjoy having a bad run so much, because you enjoy grinding through a really, really bad downswing? Or is it because you want to support your family, because you want to live without a boss, because you want to do your own thing? So if you remind yourself of the overarching principle of the value that is behind everything, then you're probably more likely to be able to push through tough times. Another example, non-poker related, would be, do I tell the truth because it's so much fun to tell the truth, because this is pleasant right away? No, of course not. Very often it's difficult to speak the truth, and you speak it because it gives you better results in the long run. It will improve your relationships. It will attract the people that you connect with, and it will prevent conflicts in the future if you speak the truth. So this is the why you speak the truth, and not because it's so much fun in the short run. The most basic question that I mentioned earlier already that I use quite a lot is, does it bring me closer to my values or long-term goals? Does it bring me closer to my value of living healthy to eat this chocolate cake? Or does it bring me closer to my value of living healthy to have a salad? And yeah, again, you can use this for very small or very big decisions. You can ask yourself, is this the type of person or the type of role model I want to be? Would I behave that way if my children were watching? Would I tell other people you should behave that way as well because it's the right thing to do? You can ask yourself, can I live with this decision with a clear conscience? Can I sleep well at night if I make that decision? Maybe not necessarily right away. Maybe it's a difficult, unpleasant situation or decision, and then it's unpleasant, or you might lie awake for a few nights and think about it again and again. But later, like a month later, or even a year later, you can tell yourself, yes, this was absolutely the right decision because it was in alignment with my values. And lastly, you can ask yourself, this is a little bit of a different question. What else could I do to achieve this goal? Or is there another way to move into the direction of the same value? Let's say your value is being, you want to make the most out of your potential. You want to be productive. You want to be successful. Those are, of course, totally fine. They are great values to have, but only if you go after them in a healthy way. And often, of course, people who are very ambitious, who want to be successful, they sacrifice everything to be successful right away. So they work 60 hours a week and neglect everything else. And that is, of course, a very unhealthy way to go after that value and to move into that direction. And then if you ask yourself that question, maybe you realize you can go after the same value of being ambitious and successful in a completely different way, by working 30 or 40 hours a week, by taking enough time to relax, enough time to regenerate, enough time to sharpen the axe. So, for example, to study more instead of only grinding, and also take care of your health and your social life, so that when you get back to work, you feel more energized, you feel more relaxed, you feel more balanced. So yeah, those are the questions you can use to make good decisions in difficult situations. And I wrote those on these yellow Post-it notes for a good reason, because that's something you can do as well. If you've never done this before, it will be difficult to remember these questions in the deciding moment. So just in order to, really to burn them into your brain, you can choose the question or the questions that you like most and put them somewhere where you see them regularly. Put them on your laptop, put them on your fridge, or in your bathroom, on your bathroom mirror, and you will see them again and again and again. And remember, then you're more likely to remember them in the important moments. And the more often you use them, the more often you make good decisions because of these questions, the more likely you are to remember them next time. And of course, at some point, you don't need these reminders anymore. And now, lastly, I want to give you another exercise, which is called the value diary, that helps you, for one, identify new values that you haven't written down yet. And secondly, realize which values are the most important to you. Which ones help you make the best decisions? Which values have the biggest impact on your life? And what you do is, in these 4 columns, at the end of the day, it's totally fine to do it for 5 minutes and only to think about 1 or 2 situations every day. But what is important is consistency. So rather than doing it for 30 minutes once a week, do it for 5 minutes, 5 days of the week. That's much more valuable. So consistency is more important than intensity. And what you do is you think of a situation during your day that made you feel an intense emotion. So in a situation where one of your values or several of your values were being put to the test. An example would be somebody talks negatively about a friend of yours. Then, of course, the values that are being tested are honesty and standing up for your friends. And then, depending on how you behaved, you will feel a certain way. So if your value is honesty and standing up for your friends and you say nothing, of course, you will feel ashamed of yourself because you didn't speak up. You will feel angry. You will feel frustrated. And you can even write a value from 0 to 10, how intense that emotion was, to get even more out of information out of it. And so if your anger and your frustration and your shame is very intense, that of course tell you that these values are really important to you. On the other hand, let's say you interrupt the person and you speak up and you stand up for your friends and you tell them, shut up, that's something stupid to say, or you shouldn't talk that way about my friends. Then you will feel proud of yourself. You will feel happy, and you can tell yourself that was the right thing to do. And if those emotions, those positive emotions, are very intense, that also again tells you those are important values for you. Or another example would be if you're feeling lazy before going to the gym, then your values of staying healthy and being disciplined are being put to the test. And depending on whether you go or you don't go, you will, of course, again, feel, for example, anger or frustration with yourself or ashamed of yourself. Or if you do go, you will feel proud. And after the workout, you will feel relaxed and happy. And again, if those emotions are very intense, that is a clear sign that this value is really, really important to you. So again, you can, for one, find new values. Maybe you have a situation and you realize, oh, there's a value here being tested that I haven't written down yet. Then you can add it to the first exercise. Or you're simply gathering more information, which values are the most important ones, which make you feel the most intense emotions, which influence the most important decisions in your life.